Hey everyone, this is Mathmetrics. Today I'm going to talk about an interesting case that arose while I was working on the very early stages of a start to finish video. I'm going to be building up a mid-tempo bass tune using the clip to zero method and kind of talking my way through some of the CTZ decisions I make as I go. And I've also been having some interesting conversations in the Bitwig Discord about ducking and spectral compression and things like that recently. And so this falls right into that too. I originally started this video as an answer to a question over there, but it turned out good enough. I think it's useful to just publish it for general consumption. So this is the song I'm working on. And it's just the nucleus of a drop. This is like super early arranging, sequencing, almost no mixing decisions whatsoever, just super basic gain staging and some very simple ducking if I hear a problem that jumps out at me right away that could be fixed with ducking. So to solve this problem, it was a place where these two different subby sounds are interacting with each other, and that's what this video is going to be about. So it's about 20 minutes long. Enjoy. Hopefully this will be helpful to some of you. All right, here's an example of needing to duck one sub to another sub, why you might want to do that. Here's the core of a mid-tempo drop. So, it's very bare, it's very basic, needs a lot more stuff going on. Again, this is just basic nucleus core. You can see this purple bar is where the sub is coming in right now, and it's one type of sub sound. All right, we're going to add some interest to this. We're also going to increase the intensity of this section, get the lefts up a lot higher. So, we're hitting much louder, much more interest, much more movement, much more groove. Problem is this offbeat bass sound is itself very strong in the sub frequencies. And I don't necessarily want to cut that out because that's an important bounce. It's the other sub bounce. But I want to have this interplay between where the two subs interact here, and I don't want them dimming each other in a way that's audible. So listen to how they interact right now. Now, that probably sounds okay to you, depending on your listening setup, because I'm not using VSX, and it's a little hard to really hear what's happening in the subrange and how uneven the subrange is here. Let's make it a little more apparent by muting the drums. And let's mute some of the other instruments so that we're just hearing the two bass subby sounds interacting with each other. Turn off the drums here. Okay, so you still might not be hearing anything obviously wrong here, but there is something wrong. If we look at the sum of these two waveforms, you can see that here's a white line for 0, here's a white line for 0. These are my 0 crossings out here. So when those two subby, sounds are combining, we're going over 0. Those are going to get clipped. That's going to affect the quality of the sub a little bit. And you're hearing the clipping right now. It doesn't sound too bad, but we can do better. We don't need to have this huge amount of you know, one big sub overlapping with another fairly big sub, you know, and creating this thing going way over zero that has to be clipped for a fairly long section of time. We don't want that. That causes problems. And if I bring in a filter, we can hear the problem a little more clearly. I'm going to get rid of this, scooch this over, and let you see kind of the subspectrum as well. So, so look at this fundamental down in the subregion and notice how most of the time it's down here, but then every time they sum together, it bounces up by a good 4 or 5 dB. That's a significant pump, right? A significant bump. And not only is it going to get clipped, but it sounds uneven. So let's kind of filter down to just the bass range and you can hear it a little bit better. Hear how it swells up a little bit at the on the downbeat where these two are interacting. Let's go to just the subregion. See how uneven that sounds? Now again, this may not sound too bad to you yet because depending on your speakers and your headphones, but let's go to VSX and let's hear this same section through VSX in some really subby environments. First, I'm going to bring back everything. Now, this doesn't sound the same way to you as it does to me because you don't have the headphones that are matched to this emulation, but it suffices to show in a little more subby environment. We're listening through these big Empire soffit mounts back here. Let's go to something even subbier, which is this room with these big far fields and this huge subarray spread all the way across the front of the room here. There's actually a whole bunch of subs along here. Hear how it swells up? Let's go to a club environment where things will get nasty. It's a little bit too much of a boom, boom, boom. There's just too much of a swell there, and it gets especially swampy in this club environment. So let's go back here to the subtrack, and let's bring up Smart Comp, which I use to do some spectral ducking. And let's get some things where we can see them all. All right, I'm going to unbypass it. So it's now doing some spectral ducking. It's going to duck the big clean sub against the doinky offbeat bass. Now you can see where it's cutting into the boom, boom, the downbeat bass. It's cutting in right there every time the doinky sub comes in. See those cuts right there? So we're keeping the offbeat bass very present. Notice over here in the summed signal, right, where these two are interacting, you can now see the cut in the downbeat sub, and you can see that the summed amount is now staying under the zero line most of the time, and it's looking a lot more even all through here. Here's the downbeat sub by itself, and then here's the offbeat bass coming in and interacting with each other, and there's a very subtle interplay between them now. And now the whole combined or glued together sub is looking a lot more like a sub. and it's staying in the region or general amplitude I want for the sub. Over here, you can also see that the bounce of that lowest fundamental is much, much less now. See, it's only jumping a little bit. Now watch when I bypass this again. See, it's a huge jump here. And that's, when you see a big visual jump like that in your sub range, that's going to sound really, really, really uneven. In a big club environment with a big sub array, it's going to just get swampy. So again, listen to just on and off with and without. We've got two different textures interacting with each other on the downbeat, but they're not summing in amplitude and getting swampy. Instead, we're just hearing two different textures kind of interplaying on the downbeat. Bypassed. Hear how it really now swells up and swamps, kind of overloads on the downbeat now? Now we're just going to listen to our low end. Hear that swell? Sometimes it's really heavy. Hear that? Now it's much more even, and we're just hearing textures interacting with each other. And maybe it'll be even more obvious if we just isolate the subregion. Fairly even sounding. Hear that big swell in volume? So by doing this kind of spectral ducking of one sub to another sub, not only are we making sure we're not going to run into a clipping situation, but we're also keeping the volume pressure a lot more even in the sub and bass region. And so there's a lot less muddiness. There's a lot less of this that's too much, especially in a big club environment. And let's bring all the sounds back in now and let you hear in a couple different rooms. Here's the other sub-heavy room again. See, I can, depending on what you're used to listening for and whether you've ever struggled with this in a club environment, I can hear the problem in this setup, but you might not think of it as a problem, but you can feel that subtle pressure increase when the two subs are interacting. Here's a car with a subwoofer in it. You might hear the problem here. See, that sounds nice and even. There, did you hear that pressure push? there. Certain see these subs are out of the phase of the offbeat bass is constantly changing, so the phase interaction between the two subs is different every time. But there's like every 2 or 3 pushes, every 2 or 3 interactions, there's a swell because 'cause they're really, really summing together, just like you can see here. And that, when you see that, you're also hearing that push in the car, and so it ends up sounding very uneven. Uh, but let's go back to full spectrum and bring all the instruments back real quick. So let's let you hear the whole mix. And we'll listen to this on a few different systems and also bypassed and all that good stuff. So here's a pair of barefoot midfields. Actually, let's listen to it bypassed first. So you don't hear any difference really on a in a bypass situation. It's only going to be in the heavy bass or heavier bass environments that you'll really hear the problem come in. So now we'll listen on these barefoot midfields. See, I can hear it there, but that's because I know what to listen for. Let's go on these bigger empires here. There, it's, about the same. You can start to hear it a little bit if, again, if you know what you're listening for. Here's where you really start to hear it, because again, this is a car with huge subwoofers in it. And now you're hearing that sub pushing very unevenly on the downbeat. Again, a big room with big subwoofers. There, I just heard it. Now if we even it out. Nice and even. And then again, the club environment's the real acid test. See, that sounds nice and even. The sub isn't overwhelming at any point. You have two textures interacting on the downbeat, but they're not summing with each other and making a swell. Now listen for the swell when I turn this off. Hear how it just sounds overwhelming on the downbeat a lot of the time? There's a few downbeats where it's okay because the way the phase interaction is happening, it's staying relatively even in amplitude, but other times the phase interaction is really causing the combined subs to swell really noticeably. And in this environment, it just becomes too intense. Now, subjectively, maybe you think that bounce is okay, that sudden on the downbeat. That may seem okay, especially on small speakers or, no ambulation at all. Um, but it's not okay in big environments. That'll really wear on people. It'll sound really uneven in a club environment. So these are the kind of things you have to think about. And, trying to use multiple subs in a song is often problematic. That's why it's often a lot easier to make sure there's only one clean sub. And on all your mid bass sounds, you high pass out the sub region so that you only ever have to worry about one sub and you can keep it even and you can keep it tight. But in this song, I really wanted that offbeat pump and I wanted that interaction. So it just works out way better to do this kind of spectral side chaining. And again, this is super rough early. I mean, I haven't done hardly any mixing at all. I'm just doing real bare bones leveling and gain staging and clipping stuff. So this will sound really different once it's truly finished out and truly mixed. But you got to get these basics right. And sometimes this kind of specialized ducking is very, very helpful. Okay, hope this helped.